Hey there, welcome to Stress and Gut Health with Dr. Mazen Abbas, holistic gastroenterologist. And this will be a sort of interview discussion with Dr. Abbas as part of a series with myself, Dr. Traci Potterf, that's the PhD kind of doctor, and my business partner, Skya Boudousquié. We are integrative health consultants and patient advocates, and we're really big on educating people and empowering people to get to the root causes of their health problems so we can have an amazing life. So we're going to start out with a meditation that I will guide, and then we will get into some really good stuff with Skya, Dr. Abbas, and the people that joined us. All right. Okay, so go ahead and sit up nice and tall, get comfortable, and just see if you can get a long spine and relax your shoulders down. It might feel good to ground your hands on your thighs or in your lap. And we're just doing a checking in, really brief noticing meditation where we just notice how we're feeling. We notice how our body's speaking to us through sensation. So the same way you would look at a view on the outside, a spectacular view, turning your gaze inward and looking at the view on the inside by just feeling and breathing. And then I'm going to just guide you through some really easy breathing that gives our brain this feeling of soothing, calm, and safety. And it almost creates a sensation in the body like we're being rocked. And when we're stressed, we tend to breathe more through our mouth and or take smaller breaths. And we don't fill up with breath as much. We don't complete our exhale as much. So we're going to be really generous with our breathing, and we're going to love on ourselves for just another minute or two. So as your eyes are closed and you're just as still as you can be, you're going to take a long, slow inhale through your nose, and you're going to fill up with as much breath as you can all the way into your belly, like you're filling your belly like a balloon. And then you're just going to pause at the top of the inhale. And then you're going to slowly exhale through the nose, letting it be a little bit longer than the inhale was. And you're just going to keep exhaling until no more breath can leave you. And pause. Slowly inhale through your nose again. Fill all the way up with breath until no more breath can come in. And just pause. And then slowly exhaling through your nose until no more breath can leave your body. And I'm going to give you one more minute in silence to just breathe like this on your own. Full inhale, pause. Slow exhale, pause. 1 minute, your own timing, breathing and feeling. Noticing how the sensations in your body shift as you breathe and feel. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And Skya and Mazen, you can turn on your microphones.
Thank you, Traci. That was a wonderful meditation. I feel great. So we're both excited to have a friend of ours here who is a really valuable asset to his community. He is a doctor, Dr. Mazen Abbas. And why don't you go ahead and tell us what kind of doctor you are, Dr. Abbas?
Hey, thanks.
Abbas, sorry.
Abbas.
Abbas.
Anything you want, Scott.
Okay, Boudousquié, whatever.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, Tracy and Skya. This is a great honor to be on the show with you guys and do this webinar, and hopefully we can get a good discussion going about stress and digestion. My background is so I started off with a public health background. I worked for the CDC and went to Emory, got my master's in public health and environmental health, and then I went on to start at osteopathic medical school, so DO school. So there's all doctors in the United States that are physicians can either have a DO or an MD degree, and we're licensed pretty much similarly and board certified similarly. I then joined the Army and did my training in pediatrics at Triple Army Medical Center in Honolulu. And then spent 2 years as a general pediatrician, as a flight surgeon in Belgium at NATO. And then after that, I went on to get a fellowship in pediatric gastroenterology. And then I finished my Army career and then went on to practice in pediatric gastroenterology for about a couple of years. I was in Minnesota, and then I worked in the Bay Area. And then during that time, I started really evolving my practice to really understanding what the medical community has been kind of neglecting a long time, which is the effect of the mind on the body, and then vice versa, the body and the mind. And that was through my own experience, learning it through the symptoms I was having and stress at work and so on. And then I decided to kind of quit everything I was doing and start kind of a blend of a practice. So I'm still practicing in a hospital. I'm actually in California right now, in Fresno, at a children's hospital. So I'm still doing that 1 week a month. And then the rest of the time, I've dedicated my time to doing more holistic healing and spending more time educating, doing workshops. And then out of Kailua, I started a practice in holistic gastroenterology, which is really a field that I kind of invented. Like there's not like a holistic gastroenterology title out there.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah. And the idea is that I'm still a gastroenterologist. I'm still using all my training, my background in medicine, public health, to kind of use more of a holistic approach to trying to figure out what's wrong with my patients, and to help my patients understand the connection between their mind and their body, and then also giving them the tools and the guide they need on their journey to better health, instead of just pushing pills on them. Not saying that there isn't a role for medications in certain disorders, but knowing why we're using them and using them for short periods of time instead of an indefinite, like here, take some Prilosec, the rest of your life kind of attitude. So we need to kind of change that. And I'm not the only one in medicine that's really changing their practice that way. The problem is the environment most doctors practice in is now corporate run, and their schedules are controlled by basically MBA types, and they're there to produce RVUs, which is revenue, and so we're not given much time really to spend with patients anymore. So that's my background. That's kind of what I've been doing and learning more about, and through Tracy and others, I've really been able to be blessed to have been educated about what's really going on in the community and what people are doing outside of what their doctor is prescribing them. So that's been great for me.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about what happens to your digestion when you're in sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system state. So I was hoping maybe, Mazen, you could share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's great. We're starting off right in that, because right now I'm in a very parasympathetic state. I worked 12 straight days, very sympathetic, and I decided to take some time, come up to a cabin up here in by Yosemite. You can see it's the Owl's Nest cabin, and I'm also doing a cleanse. So I went to a kind of a juice with lion's mane mushroom, calming mushrooms, And that's all I've been taking is just water, tea, and some juices, and no food for the last 24 hours. So I went on a hike today and feel very calm and relaxed. Did some meditation, and that's, so why do I want to be in a parasympathetic state? Parasympathetic. Yeah, I'm going to tell you the difference. Why you want to be in that state? So our nervous system has two states in the present moment. Okay, so I'm going to talk about present moment nervous system, because the other part, the analytical and all that, I'll let Traci deal with that. I'm going to talk about more of this automatic nervous system that's inside of us, that is basically, when we are present in a present state, we can exist in two states, our nervous system. It's either we're in a fight or flight, which is a sympathetic nervous system state, or we can be in a rest and digest state, which is the parasympathetic state. And you can't be in both at the same time. So it's one or the other. So most animals, like if you ever drive past a cow or a horse or anything, you stop and you watch them, they're almost always in a parasympathetic state. They're either eating or they're resting, okay? Rarely do they get riled up and go into a sympathetic state. And the sympathetic state is important for survival, to avoid danger and to move so you can go find new food sources and do other things. But it's not the state we predominantly should be in. But most humans live in a sympathetic state most of their day, whether you get in a car to drive, or whether you're at work, or just dealing with your kids or spouse or partners. You're always revving up your nervous system into a kind of a fight or flight mode, even though you might not even be aware, because most of it is conditioned, habitual, and probably started when you were really young. So these two states are counter to each other. Now, the sympathetic nervous state is associated with hormones like adrenaline, okay, epinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and then long-term, if you're in that state, cortisol. Now, cortisol is a kind of a good thing and a bad thing, okay? And if you are an animal being chased by a lion and you get injured, if you've been stressed and you have cortisol in your body, it actually, in a way, helps you evade, get through that moment of being in the injury. So we notice patients in the ICU, their cortisol levels go up, okay? And it's a hormone that we even prescribe for certain patients that have like autoimmune disorders. So prednisone, for example, we'll use to calm the nervous system, the immune system down. But cortisol it's meant for hours, maybe a day or two. It's not meant to be every single day of your life to be on a cortisol. So what happens is most people are living most of their life with cortisol levels elevated. And the effects of cortisol elevation is you tend to crave more carbohydrates. And it makes sense why you'd want carbohydrates. If you're in the middle of a dangerous situation, a stressful situation, you need glucose straight to your brain, because that's the most efficient fuel for your brain to use in immediacy. Like if you need it right now, okay? If you need to go mobilize fat stores, it's going to take you time, and actually you have to expend some energy to do that, and you want to conserve energy. Now, animals like a zebra running away from a lion is using glucose for its muscles, right? For its leg muscles, so it can run. Humans, we have no superpowers, okay? Like we have no big muscles. Like we can't outrun a cheetah or a lion. We can't climb a tree like a monkey. We can't. So our only superpower we have is this brain. Okay, this brain that can analyze situations and use previous experience or ancestral experience and help us evade danger. So while we're in this state, we got cortisol, we're demanding sugar. And the problem is that sugar we eat during that stress state is going somewhere a lot of times, because excess amount, not to our body. It's either going into where we need it. It's going either to storage in fat for later use, or bacteria is fermenting and wreaking havoc on the system. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But in the parasympathetic state, when you're in rest and digest, the hormones you're releasing, typically the vagus nerve is the big nerve that is your big parasympathetic state nerve, and it goes into your gut. And what it's doing, it's promoting digestion and motility of your gut. Okay, so if you're in that state, if you're resting, your gut is digesting and moving things along, or you're going to be eating. So those are kind of the two states you're in when you're in a parasympathetic state. So you want to be in a parasympathetic state after eating, for example. So most people will rush through their meal at lunch and they go right back to work, right? And they haven't spent any time giving their body some time to stay in that parasympathetic state to allow the nutrients and digestion occur the way it's supposed to occur. So, and then they wonder why they feel tired in the afternoon after eating meals, or why they get bloated, or, you know, while the bacteria is fermenting away, motility in your gut is slow. So you're just bloating from all that sugar you ate. So the nervous system in your gut is called the enteric nervous system. So it's a branch of that parasympathetic nervous system state. So there are nerves in all of your gut, from your esophagus down all the way to your anus, that basically send signals straight up to the brain, and they can either influence the brain to change your behavior, or vice versa, the brain can influence your gut to slow it down if you're trying to evade danger. So these two states are always competing against each other, and those are your present moment states. So everything else you're doing is really not a present moment state, you know. And we can talk more about that later as we talk.
Skya.
Yeah, that was an incredible explanation. Thank you. Brought in a lot of different aspects to that. So one thing I'd like to just ask you or mention is like the idea of, you know, well, why are modern humans so stuck in this sympathetic state? We know that it's there for a reason, and that it actually is an important thing to have, but like, why are people so stuck in this? And I know Traci and I talk a lot about like the mind and the emotions. And so, yeah, like what is it about modernity that has led to this chronic sympathetic stressed out state?
Well, I mean, so I don't know if anybody's read the book Sapiens by Harari. He's an Israeli historian, anthropologist. It's a recent book. It just came out. It's called Sapiens, The History of Humankind. And it's kind of very interesting because if we go back about 70,000 years to the jungles of East Africa, you know, our brain had evolved quite a bit up till that point, over a couple million years as humans. And the theory used to be that we were evolving, different humans were evolving generationally in a linear pattern. That was the original thoughts in the past. But then with DNA technology, what we realized is that the evolution of humans was much more complicated, and really we were evolving in different places around the world. But the humans living in East Africa evolved in a very different way than humans living in for example, in Europe. So like Neanderthals. The ones living in East Africa were kind of small creatures, and they lived mostly in trees. And their brain had evolved where they were able to analyze information, right? Like they can analyze information of what happened to me and what could potentially happen to me. Like, for example, a lion attacked yesterday while I was at that watering hole, and tomorrow it could attack there, so I should alert others not to go there. Well, what really evolved was language, right? So in 70,000 years ago, humans developed language to be able to communicate these fears. And the problem is, well, our brain is able to store that information in language form now, right? Like, it went from instinct, kind of more habitual, built into your body, knowing like dangerous situations, you kind of knew the weather was changing, you knew things, to also be able to communicate it and register it in language and transmit that to other people, even though they might not have experienced any of that, right? And so if you imagine like that evolution that happened in 70,000 years with language and being able to spread information, it went for humans going from in the middle of the food chain, right? We were in the middle. Like, we weren't like really like, we weren't like lions. Lions are majestic. They know they're lions. They don't eat more than they need to eat. You know, they just hang out. And we bypassed all of it because we developed language. and we went straight to the top. Well, part of jumping that chain, that ladder we jumped, we have an inherent anxiety built inside of us that we don't belong at the top, right? So all of us have that, okay? Like we know we don't belong top, so it's built into our nervous system, okay? Because really when we were in the middle of food chain, we were always scared, right? Like we were just, and then we jumped to the top. Now we have all this power because we can communicate, but it doesn't get rid of the anxiety we all have inside of us. So that's like the inherent drive for why we're always in a sympathetic state, in that we kind of are in a state that we're in a place where we don't belong. Like we're not living in the present moment anymore. We're living basically afraid we're going to lose.
Living up here, in our head.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, you know, and then there's trauma and stress from childhood and all kinds of other factors that play why most humans, you know, the need to provide and knowing, you know, you know, like always wanting to hang on to what you have, you know, all these things also drive your nervous system to always want to be in an elevated state, like that somehow somebody's going to come and take it away from you, you know, at any moment. Plus, we also have this knowledge of death. Other animals have no awareness of themselves as outside of their present moment, right? They have no awareness to something greater, to the universe. They have no awareness to death. And we do. So, you know, in Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, he talks about this in his book, where he talks about how that underlying anxiety that we all have stems from this knowing that we are mortal. So in a way, we're finite beings living in a mortal we're infinite beings living in a mortal or finite body, right? That we're basically brains in worm bodies. And so that can, you know, clearly puts a little anxiety in all of us, right? Knowing that although we are so capable of understanding so much, we're all going to die, you know? And that also in itself triggers your nervous system to always be a little bit heightened. Right. Why we can't just be like a cow and just hang out in the field and eat all day and relax, right?
As long as we're not living like factory farm cows, right?
Yeah.
So one of my other things, one of the things Skya and I like to bring up also as a source of anxiety and stress is that in so many ways, and I think a little bit of an evolutionary biology hint to this conversation, is that we've been living in ways that are not in alignment with our evolutionary biology. So a lot of our most basic human needs for nourishment, connection to nature, human connection, downtime, rest, rejuvenation, like a lot of these most basic human needs are not being met. And we're just speeding up faster and faster and more and more and faster and faster and more and more and faster and faster. And then we're living a life like we're in a marathon. And if you run one marathon or train for a marathon, okay. But if you live your life like you're running a marathon, then what is that going to do? What is like living off cortisol? What's that going to do to your immune system? What's it going to do to your gut? What's it going to do? Like what diseases come from living off cortisol?
Yeah, I mean, here's kind of what's really interesting. Like, cortisol is like glue, right? Like it's building the blocks of your body, but with glue. So there's no real foundation to it. Okay. And you know, like I said, it's not a bad hormone to have when you need glue. Like, you know, if you get a cut and you need some glue to glue it, then you glue it. But really the healing comes from within. The building comes from within. It's the building blocks you take in and how your mind processes to put energy in different parts of your body kind of to build it in a solid foundation. But if you're living on glue, living on stress your whole life, the glue is going to come off sometime. And for most people, that's like a retirement day. Like, hey, I retired. You get your retirement certificate. You're like, I'm going to go golfing or going to now move and live on an island. And then, of course, disease starts to come in. Right. And it comes in because you've been living on glue the whole time. You didn't really build your body and your mind from a healthy foundation. And so we need to understand that, because most of the diseases, most of the symptoms that people experience, almost probably 95% of what we deal with in medicine is related to stress. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting, the American Heart Association doesn't even include stress as the leading cause of heart disease in America. It doesn't even put stress in the list. So you're like, wait, why do they deny? Why is the medical community, why is the corporate community, they're all denying stress, right? As the cause of all this. That's because to them, to the whole bigger picture, to the industrial machine that runs all this, we're just worker bees. We're just little ants. And we need to be stressed to be productive, right? Because if we were all just hanging out in the field and relaxing and going to the beach every day, nothing would happen in this world, right? So they need us to continue in a very stressed state. And so, so to me, it's like all these people living for a life that they're imagining in the future, right? When heaven actually is right now, okay? Like you don't need heaven when you die, you can be in heaven now. That's where you can suspend time, suspend space, suspend everything, and you're there, right? We know when we go into deep meditation, you're there, or if you're walking in the woods and you lose track of your time, you're there. So this is the thing as a physician that is not like physicians aren't aware of all this, okay? There's no conventional medicine. I'm not, preaching here to tell people you need to ditch your doctor. What you need to do is remind your doctor what they already know, because we all learned this in medical school. We learned it in a very scientific way. I'm becoming more spiritual about it now, but we all learned this. We all understand how the nervous system works. We know how hormones, where they come from in your body. We know what triggers the hormones to be released. We understand endocrinology. I mean, these are basics in physiology we learned in med school, like first week of med school, okay? So if you go back to basic physiology, you start to understand why the digestive tract is such an important place to give us information about what's going on in our external environment. And when people are having digestive symptoms, my first question is let's stop for a second and listen to what these symptoms are and try to understand what your body is trying to tell you. You're right? I mean, this is just information. It's your body talking to you, trying to tell you something. You should stop and listen to it. And if you do that,
just covering it up, right, with the prednisone or the immunosuppressants or things like that, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's like, I don't know how many times, people heartburn get prescribed like Pepcid, Zantac, Prilosec, Nexium, and that's okay. Like don't get me wrong, you might need some Nexium if you're having really bad gastritis and you got an ulcer, or you got bad esophagitis from the acid reflux. You need a little help to allow it to heal, because it is very painful. I don't want to tell a patient, hey, sorry, there's nothing I can do. There is something I can do, but the problem is not the reflux causing esophagitis, and then the esophagitis is the problem. It's what caused the reflux to begin with, right? That's the question we should ask. And, good doctors will investigate, right? They'll order a bunch of tests there, but great doctors help you find the answer, okay? And helping you figure out what's different about your life, why you're feeling that way. What are you doing? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What's your stress level like? What traumas did you have in the past you never resolved? What kind of stress are you under? Do you have ancestral trauma from before? Because when people talk about hereditary or genetic things, I love, I had a roommate, he had high blood pressure, and, and this was last year, and I was telling him, hey, you should do this, this, this. And he's like, oh, don't talk to me about it. It's genetic. It's in my family. There's nothing I can do, because people want to but that genetic, when we say genetic, we're starting to prove that a little bit, that it's not so genetic. Okay, genes are turned on and off based on environment. And that environment can be just up here in your head. Like, it doesn't have to be genetic, like environment, like, oh, there's pollution. Could be just thoughts. I mean, Joe Dispenza talks about how thoughts can really influence but in almost every book he's written, Evolve Your Brain, You Are the Placebo, a lot of it is up here, and you create an environment and then that can influence and trigger hormones, nerves, so on in your body that can result in disease or heal you. So these are things that I think, like, talking to patients about, I spend quite a bit of time trying to explain, how they have a lot more control, because really the healing comes from within, right? We were talking about this the other day, the Band-Aid effect, that, doctors, what are they doing? They're just giving you Band-Aids. We're not true healers. Like, this idea that we're a healer, like, I put my hands on you, you're healed. There's no superpower here, I promise you. Okay. There's just words. All I know is, and I can heal through teaching you. Right. And then hopefully you can process it and do what you, but the healing, like if I put a Band-Aid on a cut, you know, like it heals from inside. The Band-Aid is just there just to keep you from bleeding. Right. It's not actually, doing anything. And almost all medications we give you are just Band-Aids, you know, like cancer, chemotherapy is just killing cells. We're killing things. Okay. And hoping your body can just heal on its own. And we give you a poison, really, that can kill you, potentially, hoping we can kill the bad cells so that your body can heal and your immune system can get things under control. Mm-hmm. Antibiotics, they're just killing bacteria, right? In your lungs, let's say you had a pneumonia. I'm not healing your lungs. I'm just killing the bacteria and hoping your lungs can heal. And as we've found out from coronavirus right now, we're powerless with this disease as doctors. Like, you know, people hear about ventilators and they think like that's a cure. People going on ventilators, 80% are dying. Okay. A ventilator is just there to help you breathe. But if your lungs are so inflamed and damaged, there's no place for oxygen to cross to get into your bloodstream, you can't survive, you know? So we are very limited in what we can do as physicians. But good physicians will spend more time getting to know you and helping you figure out what you need to do differently, you know?
Yeah, I wanna focus on that for a second, because I think that's really powerful what you said. It's like as a physician, you have this understanding of how the physiology in the body works, and you're even able to to look at different parts of the body, different systems, different, you know, things you can test, different markers that can kind of give you an idea of what's going on in the system. And you can be a detective, and you can actually you know, figure out well, okay, this is off, so let's figure out why that's off. And then you can start to, you know, make connections. But I think what we're talking about is, in most situations, doctors aren't really getting very far under the surface. It's like they're kind of just in their specialty, focusing on kind of what the usual culprits are, and you know, using a lot of the Band-Aids, which again, we say, you know, we know are sometimes necessary. But what I love about what you're showing us is that it is possible to take it that one step deeper and actually draw those connections across different body systems. Like, hey, we actually need to know what your daily nervous system state is to know why you have this chronic infection in your microbiome, you know, in your gut, you know, because you're somehow creating an environment in your gut with the way that your nervous system and your lifestyle and maybe past traumas, the way you're eating, you know, these behaviors that are all interlinked. And you're basically saying it is possible for modern medicine to take that extra step and start looking at these different things more holistically, to basically to empower their patients to actually get to the root causes of these things. And I just want to say, as a gastroenterologist, I really hope that you start a huge movement among gastroenterologists, because it is one of those fields that lags behind some of the other ones as far as the holistic viewpoint, which is strange because, as we know, the gut is the center of our health. And it's so important to look at the nervous system and the lifestyle and the relationships and, you know, emotions and all of that stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think what gives me a really unique perspective, so adult gastroenterology is a very different profession than pediatric gastroenterology. So pediatrics, you know, our primary focus is to keep kids healthy. So being a pediatrician before I became a pediatric gastroenterologist gave me that unique perspective that you know, that my job is to keep you healthy, to prevent disease, not to just treat disease. So we spend a lot of time with our patients. We spend a whole lot more time as pediatric gastroenterologists than an adult gastroenterologist spends. Because adult gastroenterologists, they're spending most of their time trying to treat and detect cancer in adult patients. And so they have very little time to really focus on this holistic aspect of these we call functional gastrointestinal disorders, where the function isn't right? Like your reflux, acid reflux, constipation, chronic diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome, dyspepsia, or the other part of the functional, because they don't, you know, when we talk about functional, when I go to conferences, nobody includes the immune system in functional, but I do, because I think that's a functional problem. Why we're becoming, why there's more autoimmune diseases, right? So when you're chronically stressed, going back to that cortisol, so here's what happens in the body. If you're chronically stressed, your body is like, okay, all the energy needs to go to the brain because the brain is your superpower, right? So it's just sucking energy. But the gut normally is your second brain, but also requires 25% of your calories for function. Okay, so it's a huge, because it's a huge tube that's like 3 times your height, right? And it's all muscles and nerves and hormones that keep it going. And it needs calories. It needs to function. Now, here's what's beautiful about the system. It's really a beautiful system, the way it's been designed over 300-400 million years, like a long time. Because so the gut brain and the gut has been there since animals like a lobster or jellyfish, or you name it, coming out of the ocean. And this thing has taken 100 million years to become an efficient system, okay? So your brain, on the other hand, I mean, we're talking a couple million years and maybe 70,000, you came up with some words to put in there. And so it's a kind of primitive, you know, in terms of its development. So really the true intelligent thing in you is your gut. So when your gut is screaming at you, I'm having pain, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, I mean, something is, right, really off balance, because this thing is super efficient normally, right? We don't even know what it's doing. You never know, like, right? You're born, you're like, whatever, right? But when you start getting gas, you're like, what's going on? Why am I getting gas, right? So it's an efficient system. So what happens with that system is, kind of going back as I lose my train of thought here. So cortisol, right? Cortisol is demanding sugar. Sugar is going to your brain. And normally the system is the gut gets its food from what's inside the lumen of the gut. Okay, so it's interesting, right? It doesn't want blood. It doesn't want the calories going into your blood, right?
The lumen is the open space.
Yeah. Inside. So it's getting its food right from the lumen, right? And there's trillions of bacteria in there that are also helping you digest the food. And they're also using some of the energy that's going into them to stay alive, right? But when we throw the system off, the first thing that happens is we start eating too much sugar, right? Or too many carbohydrates, and not enough fat and protein and other nutrients, right? We're not eating enough micronutrients.
The building blocks, yeah.
The building blocks, right? We're just eating sugar. Now the sugar goes into your bloodstream, right? And it gets stored, it goes to your liver. Liver has to process it. So here's what's crazy. We're seeing a lot of fatty livers now in children, okay? Like children needing liver biopsies to look at their fatty livers that are going into what we call non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. There's a condition children get called non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Why are we calling non-alcoholic? Because their livers look like an alcoholic's liver, okay? This is in children. Okay, on a routine basis, almost every day in clinic, I get a referral for a kid that has elevated liver enzymes and a fatty liver on ultrasound. Okay, that's crazy. That's from excess carb intake, because those carbs go to the liver. They have to be processed the liver. Now the liver is working overtime, okay, to process all this extra sugar you're eating. And of course, then where does it send it if your brain doesn't really need it and your muscles don't need it? It goes to storage, but here's where it stores around your abdominal area. Why? Because your body thinks because you're under stress, you need access to that fat very quickly, right? If I need to mobilize fat, if 3 days I'm running from a lion and I need to get to that fat, it's going to be around my belly. Why? Because that's where the fat is stored that's closest to the liver. So the blood supply from the liver, the portal systems will bring that fat mobilization straight to the liver so the liver can process it to make it into glucose so it can go to your brain and your muscles so you can use it, right? So all that fat being stored here is dangerous fat, because that fat is what's leading to what? Diabetes, fatty livers, and so on, okay?
Inflammatory diseases.
So this is related to excess stress, which leads in excess cortisol, which leads to excess sugar intake, okay? And here's where it also affects your immune system, because going back to the function of your immune system. So our biggest immune system is, you know what? Our skin and the lining of our gut. That's the first protective. That's the most important. If you get rid of skin, you know how many burn victims die of infections? That's pretty much what kills them, right? If they lose enough of their skin, we can't keep up with the infections that happen. So your skin and the lining of your gut is very tight. It really keeps microorganisms from invading your body, okay? So the skin, it's pretty resilient. It's very hard. It's hard. You have to cut it to get an infection, get deep in there, right? But the gut, on the other hand, on the inside, can become leaky when you're stressed. And the reason it becomes leaky is this. All those junctions at all the cells that are nice and tight, that don't allow the bacteria to get in there, and the layer of mucus in the lumen that keeps the bacteria from constantly interacting with your body, with your immune system, and with the cells, gets lost. Why does it get lost? Because not enough nutrients are there to keep the gut building like it's supposed to be building. Because it might be just building on sugar, but you need a lot of other things to build those cells and to keep the machinery going, to keep those junctions tight. So then what happens, you end up with a leaky gut. And that leaky gut is then, what does that happen? Nutrients and bacteria and viruses and all kinds of things living in the lumen, okay? Now your immune system is being exposed to them at a deeper level, okay? It's like, it's like somebody invading our country, where our military, which is out there keeping them from getting, now the people are in your state, okay? The bad guys are in your state, okay? Now the police have to fight them, all these other resources have to be expended now to fight them. So now your immune system is revved up, okay, in your gut. And what's it reacting to? It's reacting to things that normally live in your gut, right? Like proteins, like gluten protein or dairy protein or peanut protein or whatever protein, okay? Or bacteria that normally live there, like E. coli or lactobacillus or bifidobacterium or any of those bacteria, or even viruses. So your immune system is revved up. And when it's revved up, it easily then can go into a state where it stops being revved up. And that's the autoimmune disorders. And the problem with the immune system, when it's revved up and it starts going haywire, it's kind of like the Syrian army, it just bombs everything in the area and just says, we'll fix it later, right? And it doesn't matter, there's innocent bystanders, the normal cells of your gut, they're being killed by your own immune system, okay? And now the lining is completely open. Now you might have an ulcer, or you might have a broken down system. And now what? Now there's more inflammation. And then you get stuck in this inflammatory state that you can never get out of. And when you're in that inflammatory state, what do you feel? Well, other than the symptoms you feel from your gut, that inflammation in your body, you'll feel joint aches, you'll feel headaches, you'll be tired, So you feel a lot of other symptoms from that. It's like having a low-grade flu all your life and never knowing it,
And wouldn't you also, because of the gut-brain axis, because if we have inflammation in the gut, we have inflammation in our brain, so it starts causing depression, anxiety, even more severe mental disorders, right? And then that stress of being dysfunctional then affects the gut, so you end up in this loop. And what I hear you saying is that basically we have this thing where we're living overburdened, we're undernourished, we're overstressed, and we're in that stress state, we're making decisions where we're not sleeping, we're eating crap, we're eating an imbalance of nutrients, we're eating poor nutrients. Some of those nutrients cause inflammation within themselves, right? And then some of them, it's just an imbalance. The body's not getting what it needs. So then the actual tissues of the body, we're creating epigenetic changes in our biochemistry, and the actual tissues of the body are being compromised. And it's leading to these horrible autoimmune diseases that are wrecking people's lives. And what you're saying is that, like, if we trace it back, we have more control over this than we realize, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think that, this kind of comes online with, then what do we need to do to get our health back, to take control of our health, right? We need to take control back. Like, and the thing that I try to get all my patients to understand is that I'm just here as a physician to guide you on your journey to take back your health, right? Like, I don't have a quick fix for most of this, okay? You have the ability to, and you have to start by changing your mind about how you approach your health. And it's hard to do that because, right, most of it is habitual, but then you're also going against the grain of society. Culturally, right? I mean, it mind boggles me, like, how many places if you walk Macy's, gas stations, Home Depot, you name it, candy is at the checkout aisle.
Everywhere.
Candy is everywhere, okay? And it's like you go to Target, even at the, if you're returning things now, there's candy at the bottom of the, if you're returning at the customer service. And you're like, you go to Macy's to buy clothes, there's chocolate at the register, right? I mean, what the heck? Like, there's nobody speaking out against, if these were cigarettes, people would speak out. If they were condoms, they'd speak out. If they were Playboy magazines, they'd speak out. But candy, which is the leading killer of everybody here, nobody's speaking out, right? Nobody's saying, how dare you keep pushing this message on our children that this is okay, right? Candy should be like cigarettes, locked up in an aisle where only adults are allowed to go to or something, right? But we keep pushing carbs, 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 carbs. And you know why? Because the narrative is still this. We're all stressed. When we're stressed, we want carbs. We go to the store, what do we get? More carbs. Okay.
Keep feeding the stress, right?
Yeah.
I just want to mention, you mentioned that, you can't give your patients a quick fix because that's not what's going to fix them, but what you can do, and I know you do, and I just want to point out how valuable this is that you can show them or tell them that it is possible to reverse these things, because I didn't have that when I was a young adult, and exactly what you talked about this whole time is what happened to my body, where the stress of being a pre-med and trying to get good grades and being an athlete and eating sugar all the time, right? And I didn't get fat because I was an athlete, but hey, whatever. But like all of that led to these imbalances you're talking about in my whole system, to the point where I was diagnosed with what is considered, when you look at the diagnostic guidance, an incurable autoimmune disease, primary sclerosing cholangitis. And yet, if I had been told by someone like you, like by my gastroenterologist, that, hey, I don't have any kind of medications that are really going to get to the root of this, but you can find a way out of this if you really look deep within yourself and change what you're doing. If I had been told that, like, it would have given me so much hope. And like, there's so many people that aren't getting any hope. They're just told like, nope, this is incurable because no one else ever finds their way out of it. So, go and, enjoy the last few years of your life. So I just want to say, like, that's super valuable that you even just provide that possibility that people, it may not be likely that everyone is going to do what it takes to fix their issue, but it is possible.
But Skya, the one thing, but the one element of this that I'll tell you that I personally have learned that is necessary is coaching. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you why coaching is so important. So as a physician, if I tell you, even if I told you the truth, right? Hey, you need to you can do all these things and reverse your diabetes or reverse your autoimmune disease. Mm-hmm. But the problem is the insurance system and the whole healthcare system is not geared at actually educating, coaching, and promoting health by empowering people. Okay, because if I empower people, the system makes no money. Okay, and it's still a corporate-driven system. And so if I'm doing is empowering people and saying, hey, you can do this, just through a little coaching, then everybody would be healthy, right? And there would be no money in the system. So they refuse to put money into coaching. They refuse to put money into activities that promote better health, like mindfulness, meditation. So health coaches, like my motto is like, really, if you want to overcome a very difficult mountain, okay? Like let's give an example. Ironman triathlons, okay? Growing up, I would watch the TV and I'd see these Ironman triathletes running in Kona, and I'd be like, these are like super women and super men, there's no way I could ever do that, right? Like, no way I could ever do an Ironman, right? Like all the way till I was 40 years old, okay? And I did an Ironman. Wow. And why did I do an Ironman? I got motivated, and then I hired a coach. And the coach kept me motivated every week for 16 straight weeks, even after I got in a bike accident and broke my teeth and everything. And all my goals that I set for the Ironman in New Zealand, I was able to accomplish at age 40, when I had never been big runner or anything, you know, in my 20s or teens or even early 30s. So what it showed is that, yeah, I was motivated, but I needed a coach. And the coach, what he would do, it was very simple. He would just be like, here's some things you need to do this week and give me an update, how you did. And if you didn't do them all, that's okay, no big deal. And then they would design a new plan for me for the week after. And they were there to motivate me, to keep me on track. Even when I got on the bike accident and was, you know, out from running for about almost 2 weeks, he said, don't worry about it. I got you. We'll get you back up there. You know, that kept me motivated, because most people, when they get sick, what happens? Like, right? You know, like, who's there to motivate you, to tell you what it's okay. You know,
right. Especially in our culture, it's like there's so much misinformation out there, because a lot of it, even on the natural healing side, is again motivated by money and people just trying to sell you their product, which may have some kind of benefit. But we're not talking about just taking some kind of like antioxidant supplement here. Like, we're talking about like the fundamental foundational changes of like changing your moment to moment nervous system state habits, and learning how, like, when you do get ramped up into sympathetic, how to come back, right? Because we're all going to go there. Like, it's not like this is just oh yeah, we're going to give you a tool and you'll never have to worry about stress again. It's like, we're humans. Like, stress is a part of this, you know?
Yeah. And coaching, having life coaches or health coaches to help you along. I mean, I have a life coach and I have a therapist. Okay. And so it's like, and I'm a physician and I'm well aware of all the things that can give me all kinds of stress and so on. And I still need the guidance. I need the reinforcement. I need the reassurance that it's part of being human, right? And having someone to help you, guide you, is really an important tool, especially when people get sick, right? They need a coach, but the problem is the healthcare system is just Band-Aid, 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 and then, hey, why don't you quit smoking? You know, or stop eating, so exercise a little bit more. All right, great. Well, who's going to pay for me to do all that? Well, you know, you're on your own. Good luck. You know, insurance doesn't pay that. Right? It doesn't pay for a coach.
That's really why I decided not to go into medical school, is because it was just like, okay, I could go into this system and then just basically have my hands tied and not really be able to help people with the changes they need to make. Or I can just not do that and like keep learning more about it, because now we have the internet and we can learn about everything, you know? And then I just wanted to further develop like how to actually help people through this process, because it is very complicated, especially when you get to that point where it's chronic disease, right? You know, some of these things we can start, you know, now, like with our kids, or with, you know, just basically Tracy and I are always telling people, like, start healthy and get healthier. You know, don't wait until you're sick chronically, because then it's much more complicated.
Yeah, Skya and I we actually are very good at, probably because of what we've been through ourselves in our own health. Skya's been through autoimmune disease. I've helped my mom get through 2 autoimmune diseases in remission, and we can handle really complicated illnesses. We're not deterred by people who have complex, mysterious medical conditions. And it's so much easier if you do something before you get really sick. And even people who are already sick, you can actually get sicker. These things compound on top of each other. It's like when we neglect ourselves, we just get sicker and sicker and sicker. And there's this thing called the knowing and doing gap. And it's like, you know, a lot of people kind of know they need to eat better or get better rest or deal with the stress or thoughts or trauma or relationships. Like, people know something has to get better and they're not feeling good. People are tired. People have brain fog. Their tummy hurts. They're not sleeping well. They're having weight issues. They're feeling weak. They're feeling run down. They're having emotional struggles. Like, it's like so many people, right? Because this is the society we've created. It's the culture we've created. We need to reinvent culture, right? We need to redesign our lives and how we think and how we act in our daily world. And it's never done. It's just a process. And so I just feel like it's important not to just, you know, I really appreciate, Mazen, you bringing this up, because if you just tell someone you need to lose weight, you need to stop smoking. Yeah, people know that, but how? Like, how do I do it? Like, how do I take my life, how it is, that it's set up a certain way, my brain's wired a certain way, my thoughts are a certain way, my habits are a certain way. How do I get from here to there? And I really like that Iron Man metaphor of, like,
what I think the three of us really value is taking a person where they're at, who's in pain and suffering, looking at exactly how they are as they are in a non-judgmental way, and saying, here, you're going to be okay. Let's just get you from here to here, and we're going to hold your hand, and we're going to nurture you, and we're going to help you get there. And if you're a coachable person, if you really want to get better, you will get better, period, without exception. And your doctor can't do that for you, even if they,
you know, like we were talking about, I mean, as a doctor, like, you know, I'm there to help investigate, to figure out what your body is trying to say, right. You know, but the journey, you know, honestly is all on you, like, to get better, you know, and the problem is that the way the industry, the pharmaceutical industry and medical education and healthcare system has been built over the last 80 years, it's been driven by this idea that there's a pill that fixes you. And it's not driven because physicians drove that idea. It's driven because patients felt that it was the easier way to go, right? Like, you know, here's one that really drives me crazy. Going back to the Prilosec Nexium, just because of the side effects of these using long-term Nexium, you know, as we've learned now, you know, that how it was really affecting people, especially as you get into older age using. So it used to be thought, like, I mean, Nexium is over counter, by the way. You know, the FDA thinks this is a safe drug, right? But so you come in with heartburn, that's a temporary problem, right? And if I just spend a little bit time really getting you to understand your lifestyle, your diet, your stressors, probably take your heartburn away. And the reason I bring this up is because I suffered from heartburn, okay, for a long time. Because I used to drink soda. I used to eat unhealthy fat. Like, this is in my 20s, right? Didn't care. Like, they never paid attention to my health. And I would always have heartburn, and they prescribed Nexium. You know, I got pills and pills of it. And it was just like, oh, it just made me feel better. All right, great. Good. Refill, right? If I feel good, so the doctor is like, great, you feel good, here you go, refill. Not like, hey, what else do you change in your life? And so what you do is you just keep calling your doctor every 3 months, and your doctor just keeps refilling. And honestly, the doctor doesn't even refill it. It's some staff in their office that refills it. Okay, most of the time the doctor doesn't even sign the refill. Okay, it's just some staff calls it in or signs it for the doctor. Okay, they're given, like, literally doctors can give their staff authority to use their signature. So it's ridiculous, because if you keep telling your doctor, I'm feeling better, and they keep thinking, well, the pill must have done it, then keep taking the pill, don't stop it. And that's such a wrong attitude, right? Because the attitude should be like, here's the pill to help you take care of the heartburn you're experiencing right now, and here's the other things that I can point out that probably caused your heartburn. And if you're not able to do it on your own, here are some people that can help you do that, right? Or here's some way to do it, whether it's an app you download that keeps reminding you not to drink soda. I don't know, whatever it is. And that's a simple problem, like heartburn we're talking about. I mean, like, more complicated problems like diabetes, which is curable. Type 2 diabetes is a curable disease, okay? They never, you know, how many commercials you see come up where they show you the most newest pill for type 2 diabetes on TV, right? Like, they tell you the newest pill, and they show you the person playing tennis, how they're living their life really nice, which I don't meet any type 2 diabetics looking like that, and then how that pill made them play tennis and look that great. And then all the side effects of the pill, right? Hypoglycemia, liver failure, and death, right? And then you're like, for a disease that's curable through what? Lifestyle change, weight loss, eating healthy, stressing less? Seriously? Like, why isn't there a commercial saying, stress less, eat healthier, exercise, your diabetes will be cured, and show a person playing tennis? You know?
It's actually quite unscientific, right? I mean, the whole system is actually pretty much based on like non-science in that sense, because what you're advocating for is like, look, like, let's look at the science. Let's look at how your body's actually working and like what it's really asking for. And when we actually, you know, take all the different aspects of science and bring it into our, you know, our understanding, then we can see that heartburn is actually being caused by this, and this. And there's definitely always a stress component behind that. And so we need to address that that would be the most scientific thing to do, not to use our scientific knowledge to develop a pill to block the symptom, you know. And like you said, it's great we've been able to do that and it's valuable. So I'm not saying we should get rid of that, but we need to put it into perspective. Like we need to build it into a greater, more scientific system that actually addresses, you know, the whole system and the whole person, the whole human.
Yeah. And what I hear Dr. Abbas saying is that I have this toolkit of pills. It's not going to fix your problem, but I have this toolkit. I can help you feel better. And I think we do this with supplements too. We can use supplement pills to help you feel better, but we need to make a deal that you're going to actually get to the root causes of why you're sick in the first place, because I can't do that for you. And Dr. Abbas is a particularly evolved doctor who can see a lot of connections. And my father was a physician, and he had such horrible lifestyle habits and was so stressed and never resolved his trauma, and he died early. And he was so stressful to be around that he like the rest of us in the family had physical ailments because of the stress of being around a stressed out person, right? And so I just feel like it's actually very healing for me, Maz. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, to just even have this kind of discussion with a medical doctor, because I was told that I was crazy, you know, when I thought that food mattered, or I thought stress mattered, or I thought, you know, I wanted to look at things at the big picture of our evolutionary biology and how we need to live to thrive. And I could see all these connections. And then not only my father, but other medical doctors I would go to all looked at me like I was a crazy person for thinking there was any correlation between lifestyle and health. When my mom had Crohn's disease, I remember we sat in a doctor's office and the doctor told me that what you ate had no impact on Crohn's, that there was no connection between diet and Crohn's disease. Can you believe that? It's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, Tracy, like, you got to understand what's going on with the healthcare system right now too. Doctors and nurses are, they're working in an assembly line now, and you're just a product, okay? And so it used to be like, we all go into medicine like feeling like we have a calling to help people, and, you know, and partly because we probably experienced a lot of, like, I was in the medical system when I was 5 years old. I got hit by a car. I think I was in the hospital for 3 months. Okay. So that's how I was exposed to medicine. But you go into this calling wanting to help people, but then you're working in a product line, and you spend most of your day in front of a computer writing notes. Okay. And worrying about revenue and coding and doing all this stuff so that hospitals and doctors' offices can get paid. And what happens over time, the patient becomes an impediment to your own health. Okay. So let me explain this. Is if you're at the clinic and you're running late and you got to get home and take care of yourself, and patients are late, patients have long lists of problems they got to talk about, all this stuff, and you're sitting there and absorbing all that energy, and if you're trying to do the right thing for those patients, they eventually become what? The thing that keeps you from being healthy. So over time, doctors and nurses start seeing the patients as almost like the enemy, right? Like, wow. Like, you're the reason I'm not home with my family. You're the reason I'm stressing. You're the, you know, and you start getting very negative about the patients. And that's why I went into pediatrics, because when I noticed, I did family practice for a year before I switched to pediatrics, and I couldn't do family practice because honestly, I couldn't deal with adult patients. Like, adult patients at the time, like, you know, you talk to them, you tell them quit smoking, they come back 3 months later, they're still smoking. You know, they just, nothing changes. And so after a while, like, I just realized, like, I'm just spending all this time because I want to educate. I'm a talker. I can't just have you come in and tell me about your problem and just say, here's a pill, right? But it's draining me. It was draining me. Like, after a while, I was like, this is stressful. I can't deal with this, right? So I started like really hating the patients, like not wanting to deal with the patients. But with pediatrics, I never felt that. And the reason is I could never hate my patients. I can only hate their parents. Okay. And so I love my patients. And for anything, I've gotten arguments with parents and with colleagues because I'm trying so hard for the patient, because I want the patient to get the right thing. And so I realized I belonged in the pediatric world because, man, and my patients, honestly, they get better. Like adult patients, you can tell them 1,000 things, they come back, they're still complaining. A pediatric patient, you treat them and like they're resilient, they bounce back, right, but they're running around, they're having fun, they're acting like a kid. And I love seeing that, you know. But Tracy, yeah, you're like the medical community, the stress on the medical community, because they work in a product line now, and most of it is run by big corporations who bought out all the practices, and insurance companies that dictate how we get paid, and you're not getting paid based on, hey, how many patients you kept healthy out of the hospital, and you know, and who, you know, are eating healthy and are not, you know, you don't get paid for any of that. You know, you only get paid if you're sick. Like, and that's insane, right? Like there's no incentive for even the doctor to want to spend time to really get you to change your lifestyle.
And then also, you know, the elephant in the room, and we probably need to wrap up because we're running way over on time, but, and I want to do that experience thing we had planned. But one of the elephants in the room, and I know I learned about this a lot in medical anthropology, is just the stranglehold that the pharmaceutical industry does have on the FDA, on the American Medical Association, on doctors. And I know it's almost like sacrilege to question pharmaceuticals. But what I've seen is that's changing. Since I've seen recently, doctors are more willing to acknowledge the side effects, more willing to acknowledge lifestyle. So even though it has become very corporate, and I really appreciate you being transparent about all that because it's real, I also see, because people are getting so fed up with how it's not working, I'm starting to see some movement, like some opening in the minds and hearts of medical professionals, such as yourself and others. And so that gives me some hope that, you know, this whole medical gaslighting thing where we tell you you're crazy for thinking lifestyle matters, or you're crazy for questioning standard practices or pharmaceuticals, like that is somewhat shifting.
Don't forget about the food industry in this too.
Right.
Because yeah, I don't leave out far. I don't like FDA. I put food and drug together because I think the food industry, the processed food industry, is as much of a player in what's going on as the drug industry is.
Yeah, a lot of foods are drugs now, right?
Yeah, and you know, so one makes you sick, and the other one tells you they have the pill to fix you, and then they just keep that cycle going. So and you know, and they just keep feeding each other that way, and the government is just, you know, it just abides by that.
And that's I think Skya's and my passion, your passion too, is like stop the madness. And that's why Skya and I want to work with people one-on-one. And we were starting 2 new group programs now that we're going to be sending out an email. We're drastically reducing the pricing from the original pricing because of the COVID-19 situation. And we've decided we want to take this time, like the next 6 or 8 weeks, and we want to take people through an experience where they change their life and they get better and they come out the other side of quarantine with their life upgraded and not devastated. And we have 2 different offerings that we're going to be emailing out to you guys. And it's not like, I feel like if I tell you like it was this much and now it's this much, it's going to sound like some cheesy gimmick, but no, like that was really charging, and we're going to be making a special offer. So look out in your inboxes if you want, you know, whether it's a match for you to work with us or someone else. We just want people to take control of their lives and get better. And I know we need to leave a little bit of, we have like a question from Amber, and I think a couple people are going to have questions. We're running over our usual timing right now. Mazen, do you want to lead us? Because we're talking about back to mindfulness. We had everybody 5 bites of food. And so now we had our rousing conversation about how frustrating certain things are. How can we get ourselves back in parasympathetic?
Parasympathetic, yeah. I need to get myself back in parasympathetic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
So this is a mindfulness exercise from the mindfulness-based stress reduction program that John Kabat-Zinn started. He's a doctor at the University of Massachusetts back in the 70s, and he came up with mindfulness-based stress reduction for patients in the hospital. And that's spread, and it's an 8-week program. If anybody's ever interested, I've done the program. You should try it. But the program starts off with a mindfulness exercise with eating. So does everybody have something like raisins or dry fruits, or about 5 of them, okay? And I'm gonna lead you through a mindfulness exercise with mindful eating, okay? So I want you to place a few of the raisins in your hand. And if you don't have raisins, any food, like just a few of them to put in your hand, and just hold them in your hand. And now what I want you to do is imagine you're a being from another planet, and you've just landed on Earth, okay? And now you've been given this food and you're looking at it for the first time, okay? And you start to explore it a little bit with all your senses. So you're using all your senses for this. So focus on one of the objects in your hand. You've never seen this object before. Explore it a little bit. What does it remind you of? Turn it around a little bit in your fingers. What color is it? How does it feel? Notice the folds, the surface, how it reflects light. Does it become darker? What's the texture like? Any softness, hardness, coarseness, smoothness? While you're doing this, if thoughts arise, like, why am I doing this weird exercise? Or how is this going to ever help me? Or I hate these objects. Just let them pass. Okay? Now, take the object and put it under your nose and smell it. Bring it to your ear. Squeeze it next to your ear. Doesn't make any sounds. Now, put it in your mouth slowly. Notice how your arm brings it to your mouth and knows exactly where to take it. Gently move it around with your tongue. Explore the sensations of the object in your mouth. When you're ready, bite down on it, if you haven't already done that. Now notice what comes out of it. Move it around in your mouth. Now notice the tastes. Now slowly chew it, grind it with your back teeth. Do you notice the saliva in your mouth? Is the consistency changing? What's your brain registering? When you're ready to swallow, now consciously notice the intention to swallow. Some nerves firing there, some muscles gonna start working. Now sense as you swallow it moving down your throat. Can you feel it in your esophagus? All the way down to your stomach? So did you notice the experience? The sight, touch, sound, smell, taste? Did anything surprise you? Was it challenging to put it in your mouth and hang on to it and not swallow it right away? What was your expectation when you put it in your mouth? So I want you all to reflect about this, because this is a mindfulness exercise that's not just about mindfulness per se, but it's also what I think is important as a gastroenterologist to bring up is the mindfulness related to eating that we lack in our everyday life. And that the process of eating is a complicated process that requires multiple senses for your brain to register. But because our analytical brain, that's spending most of its time either in the past or in the future, but never really in the present moment, thinks that this whole process of eating is just something it learned a long time ago and doesn't need to do anymore, right? So that's why being in a parasympathetic state when you're eating is so important, because you need to be in the present moment. Because when your mind is going off, worrying, thinking, planning, or not able to let go of something from the past. Like, you know what everybody talks about depression, anxiety, right? Like in the same word. It's interesting why Prozac treats both. You know, you wonder about that, because really anxiety and depression are just two states of mind where you can't let go of the past. That's depression. Or anxiety, you're worrying about something you have no control over in the future. But neither state is you're in the present moment. So that's why if you notice people who have anxiety and depression can either overeat or not eat at all. It's an interesting state to be in. But what's really important is to be in the present moment means when you're eating to be fully immersed in the whole bite as you take it in and allow your brain to register all of it, because that's what triggers the proper digestion in your gut. If you do it any other way, you're messing with the system. Okay? So that's my message from this.
Thank you. That's a beautiful way to wrap it up. And I know we're kind of running over, but we're going to still open it up to Q&A. If everybody unmutes their microphone at the same time, we'll get feedback and we won't be able to hear each other. But just maybe as you're ready to talk, it's okay if a couple people are unmuted at the same time. So does anyone have a question? You can raise your hand or just unmute your mic. The people who have their video off, I can't see a hand raised, so you can just turn your mic off or on. Yeah, go ahead, Deborah. Unmute your mic. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you. Thank you all for doing this. This is very interesting. Part of the realization that I'm coming to is that a global pandemic is much less stressful to me than my regular life. Like in the past 3 weeks, you know, I have had SIBO and been treated for that and got over that, but then it still left, you know, a lot of digestive symptoms that I've been dealing with. And so the past 3 weeks since my life that I knew kind of stopped, I've lost 12 pounds and my gastro symptoms have lessened. I mean, things are not normal, and I had a little bit of an incident right before this meeting, just because maybe my assistant said, "Oh, we're going to talk about this today," but I am, you know, when this is hopefully over, you know, I do have a lifestyle where just by its nature, there is a lot of responsibility and a lot of rushing, and I teach 9-hour days at UH without a lunch break. So a lot of times my lunch is in the elevator. So I'm realizing there is no digestion time, you know, in that lifestyle. And
Deborah.
Yeah.
You need to be fasting during those 9 hours.
The whole 9 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because you have SIBO and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Right, right.
So what happens with stress, we didn't get too much about motility, is when we're stressed, our gut digestion, motility, everything slows down. It's not functioning right. But there's bacteria living there. There's lots of them, okay? And the reason you get intestinal overgrowth of bacteria is because you're feeding the bacteria, but the gut isn't actually moving things along, okay? And digesting properly. So I usually recommend that people who are in a high stress environment, they have no time to sit and relax, really should eat. And if you eat, it should be like as little fiber and as little sugar as there is you can find, okay?
And I tend to go more paleo. I mean, I tend to do better with paleo diets anyway. Well, that's interesting. How do you keep from crashing, though, if you're on for that 9 hours?
You won't crash, because we didn't get into too much about how we keep ourselves going other than cortisol, because people keep themselves going on sugar and caffeine too. But my personal experience, I stopped caffeine, coffee in August, and I'm way more energetic now in the afternoons. And what I realized is if we're not taking caffeine, we're taking sugar to boost ourselves. And, you know, right. And what we need to do is stop that, because that's a chemical way that we're influencing our body, but our body knows how to function even when, like right now, I've been fasting for 24 hours, just drinking, not eating food. And yeah, I'm a little bit more tired, but I'm a lot more clear. Okay. And after the first 24 hours, even the energy starts to change. But if you're feeding the bacteria during the day, they're just going to keep growing on you. So you got to dedicate some time to eating, to like, so really the best time to eat is when you have a good chunk of time where you can just relax. And honestly, the best place to eat is by a tree. And the reason for that is humans becoming, most of us are Homo sapiens. We lived in trees, okay? Like 95% of our DNA is Homo sapiens DNA. And if that means humans didn't eat in the fields, they didn't eat when they were stressed back in Africa 70,000 years ago. If they did, there'd be other animals that would have come and eaten them, okay? So the reality is we only ate when we felt safe. And we felt safest near trees where we could climb up and hide if we needed to, okay? So our nervous system is built completely to know safety exists when you're near nature, near big trees. So you should put big trees in your office if you're eating in your office. I'm trying to advocate for nursing break rooms to be near windows where there's trees outside the windows, and to have trees inside the break rooms. But hospitals don't allow plants. I don't know, like crazy, but it's like, at least, you know, like you notice all the nurses' break rooms are like with no windows, like. Yeah. And nurses bring a lot of baked goods. Like last week, I was like eating baked goods every day because it seems like everybody's stressed out, so they're bringing a lot of baked goods. Okay, and it's like, and so they're just eating sugar all day, or caffeine. It's like coffee, sugar, just to get through their day. And yeah, guess who's feeding off of that?
Sugar, but I do like coffee. So
yeah. Well, but that dependency, well, I'll tell you what happens when you take coffee. That's just quick side note on that. When you drink coffee in the morning, you're boosting your sympathetic nervous system, which is already going to be boosted. Okay. Like just be go to work, get in the car and drink coffee. Now, what happens is when you boost your sympathetic nervous system, you drain off all the hormones that are kind of like the easy access hormones, like adrenaline, epinephrine, you're going to boost that. Well, so what's going to happen is those hormones go away. What are you left with? Cortisol, right? So either you're going to be one of two types of people. Either you're going to drink more coffee to get the caffeine boost, but it's not going to be as effective by the afternoon. And you're going to still feel sluggish, right? By 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, because you've burned off your sympathetic nervous system hormones, right? Or you're going to eat sugar. And if you eat sugar, you get the boost, but guess what? You need more sugar. So you just keep snacking, okay? But bacteria love that sugar you're snacking on, so they're fermenting away at it too. And then the caffeine has gotten you into this mindset that somehow we are not energetic in the afternoon and you need caffeine, right? Like that somehow, but the reality is the caffeine is what triggered it, okay? So the first thing we got to let go is of caffeine and other things that boost us. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs that, because some people live in a parasympathetic state and they need caffeine sometimes, like to get going, right? Like their body's normally naturally resting and they need a boost. But most of us who, like me, like caffeine, it just boosts me more, but then by the time it wears off, I'm really tired. And when I'm really tired, I become less clear as a doctor. Like my answers aren't the same anymore. I'm not as in tune to what my patients are talking about. So you lose a big part of you by doing that. So I think for SIBO, I would definitely recommend if you can't take time to eat, then don't eat. Like you can still drink stuff, but just don't have sugar in it.
Skya,
okay.
I put a couple good suggestions in the chat. Like bone broth, if you're not vegan or vegetarian, broth. You can also do an herbal tea with some collagen and ghee or coconut milk or something like
coconut milk or cream or something that you do well with, that you don't have trouble digesting.
And also green juices that aren't really sugary. And then Rachel put one of my metaphors that living off caffeine for energy is like living off credit cards. If you live off credit cards, that's not your money. And when you try to use caffeine and sugar or whatever for energy, that's not your energy. You're actually depleting. You're going more into cellular metabolic debt. Any more questions? Amber. Unmute, yeah.
I had a question about the debate on running our bodies off of sugar versus fat, since, you know, a child of the 80s and 90s, you know, the whole non-fat thing, and then realizing that your brain needs it. But always question about each meal, how much of each thing you need, and how it's run.
So this is really important question. So first of all, to understand why they switched. So in 1940s and 50s, I don't know if anybody's read Michael Pollan's book In the Defense of Food. It's a really good book, and he explains this. So what we know is animal fat is bad for you, okay? In general, animal fat is bad for you. We can get in a debate with everybody here, but in general, animal fat is bad for you, okay? So if doctors knew animal fat is bad for you, they need to come up with a, well, then, you know, you need to remove fat from the diet. But so what happened is that they needed to give flavor to food. So sugar started being introduced into the diet in the 1950s. And then that narrative continued through the 60s, 70s, 80s, that somehow low fat meant healthy. And they didn't care about carbohydrates so much. But of course, now we realize that carbohydrates are a big part of the problem, right? Because we're consuming too much of it, because it's in so much processed food. But fat in general, healthy fats in general, are not bad for you. All your cells are made of membranes, and the membranes they're made out of fat, okay? All the hormones in your body, they're made out of fat, okay? It's the type of fats that can be unhealthy, and we know certain parts of animal fat is not healthy for you, and animal protein is actually not that healthy for you. And, you know, if you've read T. Colin Campbell or looked at the China study that they did in 1980s, or, you know, watch Forks Over Knives, or even recently Game Changers, well, we're realizing more and more, even in medicine, that animal protein and animal fat is a source of disease in humans. Okay?
Okay.
Like Weston Price?
No, well, I think this is where Mazen and Skya and I are in very different camps. So we agree on a lot of things, but we completely disagree on this. And can I offer like a counter perspective, and then none of us have to be right. We can just offer different perspectives. Would that be okay with you, Mazen?
Oh yeah, of course.
So the way I look at it is, I look at it, if an animal lived in a field or out in the wild, there, you know, as an anthropologist, populations who eat those animals don't get the same diseases as people who eat factory farm meat that's highly processed, it has a poor diet. These animals are living in a sympathetic nervous system state. They're being fed poorly. They're full of toxic chemicals. It's like toxic meat. And so the China study, it looked at China and it made a lot of generalizations, and it correlated that we eat a lot of fat from animal products. Therefore, that's probably why we have more disease. Whereas in China, well, in China, people eat all kinds of animal products, but maybe not as much factory farm. And we're also eating more sugar and chemicals than the populations they studied. So it's like correlation does not imply causation. So there's a correlation. Yeah, we're eating more animal fat, and protein, but we're eating like from really crappy sources, and we're stressed out, and we're full of toxic.
We're eating sugar with it.
We're eating lots of sugar with it, you know, and so then that's damaging. And so, but as a medical anthropologist, my understanding is that populations who eat wild game and aren't eating a lot of processed food, they have amazing health. They don't have these health problems that we're, you know, cardiovascular disease and cancer that we're attributing to animal products. So I guess where I would like to discern is the difference between animals that are healthy animals and animals that are tortured, malnourished, stressed out animals, and how we can't, as scientists, we can't treat them like they're the same thing, because on a molecular level, on a biochemical level, they are not the same thing. So Mazen prefers to go, from what I understand, a little bit more in the vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian kind of realm, whereas Skya and I are more like wild game, pastured game, unprocessed fats kind of people. And I actually lost weight and healed a lot of my health problems eating things like grass-fed ghee or eating wild fish or wild game. But I also eat a lot of vegetables, and, you know, I don't eat processed fats. Like I don't eat like Wesson cooking oil or canola oil, because these are refined inflammatory fats and they're from plants, but they're processed to the point they're toxic to our cells. So, and I feel like each person has to listen to their body and see what feels good. Like if you eat meat and you feel like shit, or you're eating fatty meat, then don't eat it. And if you
and can I add too, vice versa? If am I muted? No. Oh, if you eat a lot of plant foods and you feel like shit, or you get really bloated or whatever, like you should listen to that too, because I think that there's such an emphasis on like animal products are bad and plants are good, but at the same time I was having an issue, a functional bowel issue, where I was having like really terrible fermentation issues, and it wasn't from simple sugars, it was from like vegetable fibers, like the things that are supposed to be good for you. And as soon as I stopped that, like this very chronic issue that I've had for over 10 years went away. So it's like it really comes down to listening to your body, and then just getting back to like high quality and real food, and then learning from different people that have different perspectives. So I think it's good that like Mazen has a different perspective than us, because I think it's important for everyone's possible needs to be met through different perspectives. You know what I mean? Because everyone is going to have different needs. And
well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think both of what you said, what you're saying is true. And I think when I'm saying in a general statement is you got to look at most of the meat that's in the world is not wild game. People are able to go out and hunt for their own food, or, you know, and so when in the medical community, when they've coming up with more consensus on what's healthy and not healthy for the general population, because I said a general statement. Individually, every person is different, you know, right? Like eating too many plants, if you're stressed and you're eating a lot of raw foods, you're going to feel a lot of gas and pain and stuff because the bacteria is fermenting it. It's just as bad as sugar. You might get bacterial overgrowth with too much fiber. So for me, it's really dependent on the person, their stress level, their body type, because that makes a huge difference to how you digest.
Yep.
Yeah.
We need to have a coach, because just like supplements, a general supplement really doesn't do anything, right? So that's why everybody is different.
Yeah. And you were asking about carbs versus fat for fuel. We can be fat adapted or carb adapted, and different people feel better on different diets. There are people go on keto diets, feel great. There are people go on keto diets and they have anxiety and insomnia and thyroid problems from it. So it's like, again, back to pay attention to your body. And what Mazen's saying is like when you are in a parasympathetic nervous system state, the rest and digest state, you get clarity on what you need. And if you don't stop and feel like that beautiful exercise he had us do with these bites of food, I love that, because it's like when you really stop and come into this moment, the part of it, we had a previous conversation, Mazen, about like how the part of your brain that activates, the creative mind activates, the right brain activates, and then you become more creative, and you can have more creative solutions to conflict, more creative solutions to finances, more creative solutions to your diet and lifestyle, more creative solutions to everything, to your health, right?
And likewise, no matter how healthy and perfect you try to get your diet, if you're in that sympathetic state, you can't digest properly, and it all becomes toxic. And this is like, they've known about this for thousands of years. Like in Ayurveda, they talk about how when you're in this state, like it all turns into ama and these toxins, and it gets stuck in your system, and your system starts to break down. So it's like the fundamental thing is not figuring out, or worrying, is this right? Is this healthy? What are they going to say about this? You know, the real thing is to get relaxed and then be present, which means enjoy, which means have pleasure with your food. Because if you're actually present, like when I was going through that exercise with you, Mazen, it was like, there's so much information coming in, like that my system can take in, and it's all delicious and it feels good, you know? And I think that's the key, is we need to be present to and enjoying our food, no matter what we decide.
I always tell my patients is what's worse than your diet or worrying about what's worse than what you're eating is stressing about it. Okay. So, and I live by an 80-20 rule. So you will see me make bad choices sometimes because it's in the moment where I'm just enjoying it. Okay. And so I tell people 80% of the time live healthy, 20% do whatever you want, enjoy it, and 20% of your money save it. Okay, so that's the 80-20 rule. Okay, because you'll stress less if you have money in your bank account.
Yeah, and also I would say that like what your version of 80-20 might be is different from one person to the other. So if someone has like cancer or autoimmune disease, or they're really, really sick, then maybe your 20% naughty needs to be from the health food store, like, or, you know, maybe you ate a whole bag of chips and didn't count your chips or whatever, you know, whereas, you know, like if someone's really resilient, you know, then, you know, they might be able to pull off, you know, something a little more processed or inflammatory. I'm not saying you need to eat junk, but I think what I'm trying to say is know your body, know what your body can take and how much you're expecting of yourself. And so if you're really trying to heal, get out of a deep hole, stop digging a deeper hole. You know,
perfect example, Tracy, is celiac disease. You got to be 100% gluten free.
Exactly.
You know,
right. You can't eat it 20%. That's the thing. If you have a gluten sensitivity or celiac, I mean, even a little bit can really cause problems. Like I have a client who would not believe me about the gluten, and now I think she's pretty much thrown herself into full-blown Crohn's or ulcerative colitis because she just wouldn't stop. And she watched a TV show where a character on the TV show was diagnosed with celiac or some kind of gluten problem, and that stopped her diarrhea. And then she stopped the gluten, and then the diarrhea way slowed down. And then she had someone buy her crackers, and she ate gluten crackers again, and then she got horrible diarrhea again. And so, yeah, some people, like, there are just certain things you just can't eat and feel good.
But you can apply the 80-20 to like even that, right? Like when I healed myself, I was on what many might consider like a very strict diet, but I still found that 20% of just like letting free and enjoying it just within the parameters of, you know, nourishing myself. Any other questions?
Thank you for your message, Diane. Hey, any other questions? Hey, Mom, I want Mazen to meet you. Mom, can you unmute your mic? I always pick on her a little bit.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, Mazen. It's so nice to meet you, and thank you for all you did to help me and help support Tracy when I was about to check out.
Mazen was my lifeline when we were going through my mom having, God, I'm gonna cry. When my mom was in the hospital and she almost died from a gastric bleed, Mazen was like there for me, navigating the whole thing and helped me get her the help she needed. And I will never forget that. Thank you so much. And I just wanted you two to meet.
I will never forget it either. And you don't know how many fights you got me into in the hospital either.
Well, I'm glad you're here to watch this with us. And
right. I wound up telling off a doctor. I thought he was a nurse. he kept pushing proton pumps on me.
Oh no.
And I kept telling him, I don't want it. I don't want it. And he said, one more time, you know, you have an ulcer. I said, I don't have an ulcer. Please leave me alone. I will let you know or I will sign anything you want me to, but leave me alone about the proton pumps. Found out later he was a doctor.
Yeah. Well, so, but when her GI doctor came in and like said, no, you don't have an ulcer. Why, you know, so then he wrote on marker on the wall, the glass wall of the hospital, he wrote in Sharpie, no ulcer, and signed it. So then that ended. But also, Mazen, like, she had Crohn's disease, and that's what got me into this whole thing. The same way Skya's PSC got him into this. Her having Crohn's is how I ended up getting into being a health detective and helping people through their lifestyle. And she's been in, with all this stuff she went through, she's had all these recent scopes, and she's been in remission for like 18 years, I think now. So,
something like that.
Oh, Mom. And she had psoriasis, and she's in remission from psoriasis completely.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Great.
I'm the comeback kid.
Well, I'm glad you're here with us, and thank you so much for giving us Tracy too. She's an amazing person.
She is an amazing person. Without her, I would not be alive today. Without her help. So anyway, thank you, and it's good to meet you.
Any last questions? Going once, going twice? Deborah?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Dr. Mazen's contact information, if you can give that to us in case we're in Kailua and we want to make appointments.
Yeah, so it's Ohana Digestive Health is the practice, and if you want to email me, it's at ohanadigestive@gmail.com.
Yeah. Ohana Digest. Oh, okay. I see it. Thank you.
Digestive. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mazen, thank you for all the work you've done on yourself. Thank you for being a real human. Thank you for letting down your guard. And I know so many doctors feel like they have to put up this facade of like a know-it-all God. And thank you for just being a real human, willing to look at the big picture and share your own vulnerability with us. And
I just want to thank you for being a leader in your field, which I see really good things ahead for just being able to like help change the systemic problems in the system just by, being yourself and leading by example. And you've definitely got our support to help make that change. So
yeah. Well, if it wasn't for you guys, I think it'd be very difficult to make a transition, but meeting people like you really helps me feel invigorated to wanting to change, the way I practice and help other doctors do that too.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's change it. Yeah.
Heal the healers.
Yes.
thank you, Candy, Patty, Suki, Ember, Deborah, Rachel, Diane, Mom, everybody. I got everybody. Thanks for sticking it out this long. You guys are back. Good to see you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Love you.
For more empowering, life-changing information, subscribe to our channel. If you found this helpful, please share. Thank you for joining us. Until we meet again, please take very good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.